Chapter 28, Section 3. Conflict of communism versus non-communism is going to continue in China. So let's give a little background on how this goes down in China. Back in 1911, there had been a revolution in China. And China was left very unstable. And you're going to end up, a few years in, that some of the Chinese were inspired by the Bolshevik Revolution that they saw take place in Russia. And so you're going to see the creation of the Chinese Communist Party. By the 1920s, a civil war has broken out between these two sides. You've got the nationalists versus the communists. The nationalists are going to be led by Chiang Kai-shek. And what you're going to see is in the 1920s and going into the 30s, Chiang Kai-shek spent his time fighting the communists when he probably should have been worried about the Japanese. Now, when World War II breaks out and China's getting attacked by the Japanese, the communists and the nationalists actually work together to resist Japan. And after World War II, though, that conflict resumes between the nationalists and the communists. Now, the Communist Party has started to earn support from more people in China because there were areas of China that the communists helped free from Japanese control. And when the communists did that, they gave the land to the peasants. The communists are led by Mao Zedong. We really don't want to see China fall to the communists. So we're going to send military aid and money to help the nationalists. We even Truman sends MacArthur in to try to broker peace between the two sides. But neither Mao nor Chiang Kai-shek would compromise and give in to peace. The communists kept gaining more and more support. And by the time you got to 1949, they controlled most of China. And Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists are going to retreat to the island of Taiwan, which left Mao to form the People's Republic of China, the PRC. We refused to recognize this government. We saw the legal government of China as the nationalists that were in Taiwan. Another area that you're going to see communism taking hold is in Korea. Political tension was increasing in the Korean peninsula. During World War II, Korea was occupied by Japan. And then after the war, the peninsula is going to be divided. The Soviets will occupy the north. We will occupy the south. This was supposed to be a temporary division, not a permanent thing at all. But the tension between us and the Soviets made it so we did not work well together in putting Korea back together, and it becomes permanent in 1948. North Korea sets up their own government, South Korea sets up their own government. The communist North Korea is going to be ruled by Kim Il-sung. The current leader of North Korea here in 2018 is Kim Jong-un. This would be his grandfather. And the official name is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Although it is neither democratic nor a republic. South Korea was going to be ruled by Syngman Rhee. And the official name of South Korea is simply the Republic of Korea. Now, we don't want to see the South fall to the communists. So we're going to lend a hand to the South and help them build up their military. In 1949, the Soviet Union and the United States pulled their troops out of Korea, leaving them facing off across the 38th parallel. The dividing line between the North and the South. And you had some small conflicts, some small little clashes along the border between armies of the North and armies of the South. But on June 25th of 1950, North Korea invades South Korea. Pretty much immediately, the UN Security Council is going to call for a ceasefire. Now, you would expect that the Soviet Union would have vetoed that. But the thing is, the Soviet Union at this time was boycotting the UN, so they weren't there to veto it. They were boycotting the UN because the UN was recognizing China as Taiwan China, nationalist China, not communist China. So the Soviet Union wanted the right China recognized. Bottom line is, the UN Security Council calls for a ceasefire. Soviets can't stop this. June 27th of 1950, Truman pledges that the United States will help out South Korea. And the UN Security Council is going to label North Korea as an aggressor, which basically means UN members need to help out South Korea. Commanding our forces in Korea was going to be General Douglas MacArthur. One of the things he's going to order is a naval fleet down to Taiwan to make sure that China, communist China, doesn't try to finish off Taiwan real quick. So he orders them down there to help protect Taiwan. And 15 other nations help in Korea. A lot of people think it was just us. It wasn't. This was a UN action. Some nations contribute money, some contribute militarily, depending on what the strengths of those nations helping were. We played the primary role because as one of the two superpowers in the world, we were in a position to do so. The North Korean forces at first were very overwhelming. They had weapons from the Soviets to help, and by the time you got to September, the North had conquered most of the South. And the US and South Korean troops were pushed back into an area down there in the South around Busan. September 15th of 1950, MacArthur is going to order a counterattack. And U.S. troops are going to sweep up and land around Incheon, where they can then sweep inland and retake Seoul, the capital of South Korea. Meanwhile, from the south, UN forces can attack, pushing up from Busan there. As we launched this massive counterattack, thousands of North Korean troops surrendered. Many more flee back north. And by late October, the UN forces are approaching the Yalu River. As you can see on the map there, the Yalu River is North Korea's border with China. But then what happens next catches people off guard. The tide's going to turn in November of 1950 when China enters the war on North Korea's side and starts pushing back south. After a harsh winter, the North Korean winter is very harsh, hard fighting, MacArthur is going to fall back to near the 38th parallel. And once China has become involved here, now comes the question of how to end this war. And you're going to have some disagreement now. MacArthur wants to expand the war. MacArthur wants to blockade China. He wants to bomb China's interior. And let's help the nationalists reinvade China from Taiwan. China made the decision to enter this war. Let's make them pay. And there was some support for this idea. If we were to do MacArthur's idea, North Korea would be defeated, the communists would be overthrown in China. But people who opposed the idea had one rather large fear. If we took the war to China, even though they entered it on their own choice, it could bring the Soviet Union into the war. And that's going to be a whole different kind of war. The thing is, Truman and MacArthur do not agree on this. Truman doesn't want to attack China. You know, Truman would rather not be the one that starts a world war with the Soviet Union. You know, and MacArthur completely disagrees that there should be this limited conflict. And so you've got a disagreement here between the president and the head general. MacArthur is going to begin to publicly criticize Truman, even going straight to the Republicans in Congress about this. MacArthur starts demanding unconditional surrender from the North, and that's all we'll accept, which upsets the peace negotiations that Truman's trying to operate. And in April of '51, Truman removes MacArthur. This was not a popular move amongst Americans. Many Americans were going, from here on out, whenever they would see MacArthur, they would applaud MacArthur. Whenever they saw Truman, they would boo Truman. Thing is, though, Korea had turned into a stalemate. Neither side was moving. And that mountainous territory was growing very old. And our death toll was only increasing.